Join me today as we talk about Project Phoenix in BattleTech. And what is it exactly? Welcome to the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bob, and today we're going to be talking about Project Phoenix in the BattleTech universe. Now, similar to my What is the Dark Age video, there's a in-universe answer to this question, and then there's like a out-of-universe, why did it happen kind of thing. So we're going to do the in-universe part first. Should be able to cover both these in a single video and keep it relatively short. Fingers crossed. Um, yeah. So anyway, I should also note there are in fact two Project Phoenixes. Phoenix I don't know. Uh, we're talking about the one that involved redesigning mechs and had a technical readout and all that, not the other one. Which I found out when I was looking up information on this one. So we're not really going to go into that because I didn't really care about it, so I didn't read much about it. So, in universe, Project Phoenix comes from a technical readout. Sorry, out of universe in our reality, it's from a technical readout. In universe, Project Phoenix was a an effort to retool and redesign existing battle mechs to upgrade them to the technology that was more available in the 3060 era. And it primarily affected Intersphere mechs, but also a handful of clan mechs are involved. And I'll explain the reasoning for that in the real world reasoning part here in a minute. So this was an effort spearheaded by Vicor Industries, who sprang up, and unlike say Quicksell or GM, and yes, it probably is that GM in the 31st century. Unlike those organizations, Vicor didn't actually manufacture the mechs primarily by themselves. They would design new designs and then help retool factory lines. So they came up with new versions of existing battle mechs like the Locust or the Marauder or the Warhammer, the Phoenix Hawk, the Valkyrie, the Locust, and the Wasp, numerous mechs. And they would then sell the designs and possibly their services to go and retool factories so they could now, factories that were producing Succession War era machines were now producing them with upgraded technologies, but also a changed appearance. Even though in theory, I think the chassis is supposed to be the same. So this, uh, there's also some Ward of Blake intermingling in here. The Ward of Blake or their front companies would be the people that would go in and actually retool the factories in a lot of cases. And once the war against the Ward of Blake started, this would have been in the 3060s, so like the FedCom Civil War era. So once the Ward of Blake, once their jihad began, there was a Comstar guy who kind of blew the whistle, and it turned out that a majority of the mechs that had been made with these new features and everything had been purchased one way or another by the Ward of Blake. So while yes, other people were making them, they were still winding up in the hands of the Ward of Blake, a lot of them anyway. And Vicor Industries is like, oh no, we don't know anything about that, and they were still selling them to anyone that was interested. And eventually, their primary facility got destroyed in a fight with between the Word of Blake and I believe the Federated Sons, and that was kind of the end of them. They also, it's kind of obvious they were allied whenever the Word of Blake before the big dust up, asked them to come to Earth to help retool the factories on Earth to start producing these things. And I believe they had a factory in Detroit at that point. And yeah, so that's most of the in-universe reasoning behind it. And if you read the technical readout, you'll get a lot of little notes and tidbits like you do for the other technical readouts. You got real big blurb at the beginning trying to explain things. And I believe this is covered in a handful of other sources, but that's gonna be the primary one. So that's the in-universe reason for why these machines exist. Why you have something called a marauder that doesn't look like what you would picture a marauder looking like. What would you probably picture a marauder looking like if you're new to the game or really old to the game? If you came in like 2003, this might be exactly what you picture a marauder to look like, because that's around the time this was published. So in the real world, the reason for this is the Harmony Gold lawsuit that I talked a little bit about in the Urban Mech Lamb video. Oh, the lambs also all got redesigned here too. So the in that video I mentioned the Harmony Gold lawsuit, and I'll link to that video if you want to go check that out. And so this is what I mentioned I was going to talk about there. So out of universe in the real world, what you had was these machines that are supposed to be ubiquitous among the armed forces of the inner sphere all of a sudden can't be depicted in artwork or miniature form because of the lawsuit. So they all become collectively known as the unseen. I don't know if that's still the term everyone's using for them, and I'll explain why here in just a second. So they needed to be able to keep the machines that change their appearance, and they didn't want to say, "Oh, they've always looked like this. What are you talking about?" So they gave an in-universe reason why after a certain date, a lot of them looked different, and those became known as the re-scene. So if you go on like Iron Wind Metal's page and look at some of the metal miniatures, there will be Project Phoenix versions of them. Now, a lot of people don't care for them, and this is purely an aesthetic thing. There's a couple I actually do like. I actually do like the re-scene version of the Wasp. Um, and I think the Marauder's okay. One of them is one I did buy the metal variant of it because I thought it looked okay, but most of them I think look too skinny for the Marauder. And anyway, that's why some clan machines are also included in this, is because like if you change the Marauder, then it stands to reason the Marauder 2C probably also needs to be changed because it was probably heavily based on the classic Marauder, which means it's heavily based on the machine from Macross. Same with the Warhammer 2C, the Stone Rhino had to be changed, and a few others. So that's the out of universe reason, the real world reason. And because of that, like I said, there are still metal miniatures that you can get from Iron Wind Metals, and any of these machines that showed up in the Clicky Tech game would be the re-scene models. I know for a fact that the Wasp and the Stinger definitely made it in there. I know the Marauder 2 was in there, but I don't know how much that one overall was changed. Yeah. So I think the Warhammer is in there. So that is why things look different. Now, what does this have to do with the current lineup and everything? Well, since the lawsuit was settled, now the current incarnation of the mechs look a lot more like their original incarnation, and I believe there they are saying that they've always looked like how they look now because they're incredibly close. If you look at an unseen Marauder and a current Marauder, you can see how one was definitely heavily inspired by the other one. And so I think what they're saying is that the current look is per canon how they have always looked, but Project Phoenix is also still a thing. Now, will the Project Phoenix versions ever wind up in plastic? I don't know. I've got my doubts, but you never know. I don't think it would be as popular, but that's just speculation on my part. As I said, there's a few I wouldn't mind. I definitely wouldn't mind the Wasp and at least one or two of the versions of the Marauder anyway. So, there's that. But yeah, also because of that, I don't know if we're all still calling them the unseen and the reseen anymore, or because for a while there, I heard the current ones are called the new scene in you. So maybe that's what they're still calling them at the moment. I don't know if we've like collectively, as what passes for the BattleTech community, has settled on the names for these things anymore. Uh, it might just be the old version and the current version, and then the Project Phoenix version. So I don't know. But yeah, so we'll see what the future holds for these things, because per canon, they're still a thing, and I would imagine that some of those machines have to still be around. Some of those lines would have stayed retooled to that version of them, and if a certain thing from Kerensky Con ends up being true as far as models that we're going to be seeing in the future, because it include a lot of the Celestials that the Word of Blake used, I would think that that opens the door to other Word of Blake mechs, which would have to include the reseen versions. But that's just speculation, guesswork on my part. I don't know for sure. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Was this at all informative? Do you want to hear more stuff like this? Based on the view count, you guys seem to, because like our second highest viewed video is the one I recorded in my car talking about the Dark Age setting. Now, I know part of that's because a lot of people didn't cover the Dark Age setting because a lot of people didn't like it. But if you want to see more topics like this where I take something and really kind of, well, I didn't drill down a whole lot because there's not much to drill down into here. I mainly did this because I mentioned I was going to do this in the Urban Mech video, but a deeper topic, but same concept where I talk about what it means to the game, and if there is some real world component to the why it was made beyond hey money, then kind of go into that as well. If you want to hear stuff more like that, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this video. Have you checked out the Dark Age video I mentioned, or the Urban Mech Land video? They'll both be linked up at the top somewhere. But anyway, like, share, subscribe. We always like all that fun stuff. And yeah, other than that, just remember, no guts, no galaxy.